In the wake of dramatic election results, President Trump at a turning point. This hour, we'll bring you our exclusive interview with the president inside the White House as he shakes up his team for the next 2 years in his run for re-election. If you can't carry Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, you're not going to get re-elected. Facing the endgame in the special counsel's Russia probe. If Whitaker decides in any way to limit or curtail the Mueller investigation, you okay with that? And who's behind the murder of Jamal Khashoggi? Did NBS lie to you, sir? Plus, the president responds to criticism for not going to Arlington Cemetery on Veterans Day. Barack Obama went every year he was here in D.C. We'll get reaction to the interview from our Sunday panel. And Mr. Trump takes us inside his office.
There's nothing like it in the world.
And describes how he makes his toughest decisions. All right now on Fox News Sunday. And hello again from Fox News in Washington. As President Trump starts the final 2 years of his term, he faces new challenges. For the first time, he must deal with a divided Congress after Democrats regain control of the House. Robert Mueller's Russia probe appears to be reaching its conclusion, and there are new challenges overseas from allies like Saudi Arabia and adversaries like North Korea. We sat down with Mr. Trump Friday in the Roosevelt Room, just across from the Oval Office, hoping to explore a presidency at a turning point. Mr. President, thank you for talking with us.
Thank you, Chris, very much.
Let's start with the state of Donald Trump.
Right.
There are a number of stories out there that you're angry about the midterms, about your treatment in the media, about the way you were treated when you were in Paris. One story even said that you were in a, quote, cocoon of bitterness and resentment.
Right.
We'll get into all the details later, but how dark is your mood?
It's very light. It's fake news. It's disgusting fake news. I read a front page story in the Washington Post. They never even call me. Nobody ever calls me. You know, they hear, I don't even think they have sources. I think they just make it up like it's fiction. And I will tell you, I'm extremely upbeat. The White House is running like a well-oiled machine. It's doing really well. I have great people. I will make some changes, but not very many. I'm very happy with my cabinet, other than, you know, a couple of exceptions, and even there I'm not unhappy. And I will tell you that it's so wrong. The reporting about me is so wrong. I'm loving what I'm doing. I did well in France. I did have a problem where I wasn't able to go to a cemetery because the Secret Service would not let me do it.
We'll get into all of this, sir.
No, but I'm just telling you, the Secret Service would not let me do it, and they made it a big deal.
You've said a lot of things there. Let's try to unpack them. There's a lot of talk about staff changes. Your deputy national security advisor was moved out after your wife did something I've never heard of a first lady doing before, publicly calling for her removal. Are you comfortable with the way that went down, where it kind of looked like your wife was firing one of your advisors?
Well, I didn't know the advisor well, really, and I know they had a lot of problems. My wife did a great job in Africa, and she was not treated properly by the press. She really worked so hard. They came to me. They wanted to go a little bit public because that's the way they felt, and I thought it was fine. I met with Mira 2 days ago, and we're going to move her around. She was with me for a long time, although I don't know her. She's really somebody I don't know very well, but we're going to move her around because she's got certain talents, but frankly, she'll never be put in the United Nations, let me put it that way.
Meaning she's not too diplomatic.
She's not too diplomatic, but she's talented.
Are you happy with Kirstjen Nielsen at DHS?
Well, I like her a lot. I respect her a lot. She's very smart. I want her to get much tougher, and we'll see what happens there. But I want to be extremely tough.
What are the chances she'll be DHS secretary?
Well, there's a chance, but there's a chance everybody. I mean, that's what happens in government. You leave, you make a name, you go. The people that have left have done very well. The people that have left have done very well from my White House. I like her very much. I respect her very much. I'd like her to be much tougher on the border, much tougher, period.
Back in July, you said that Chief of Staff John Kelly will be here through 2020. Can you still say that?
I wouldn't. Look, we get along well. There are certain things I love what he does, and there are certain things that I don't like that he does that aren't his strength. It's not that he doesn't do, he works so hard. He's doing an excellent job in many ways. There are a couple of things where it's just not his strength. It's not his fault. It's not his strength.
Such as?
But I haven't even thought about John in terms of this. But John at some point is going to want to move on. John will move on.
So 2020 is no longer written in stone.
It could happen. Yeah, it could be. I mean, it could be. But let's see what happens. I have not. Look, I have 3 or 4 or 5 positions that I'm thinking about. Of that, maybe it's going to end up being 2, maybe. But I need flexibility.
You have already made at least one big change, naming Matt Whitaker as your acting Attorney General. He has a long record of speaking out against the special counsel and his probe.
I could see a scenario where Jeff Sessions is replaced with a recess appointment, and that Attorney General doesn't fire Bob Mueller, but he just reduces the budget so low that his investigation grinds to almost a halt.
The truth is, there was no collusion with the Russians in the Trump campaign.
Did you know, before you appointed him, that he had that record and was so critical of Robert Mueller?
I did not know that. I did not know he took views on the Mueller investigation as such.
And when you found that out?
I don't think it had any effect. If you look at those statements they really can be viewed either way. But I don't think it would have any effect.
He says there's no collusion.
Chris, I'll tell you what.
He says you can starve the investigation.
Right. What do you do when a person's right? There is no collusion. He happened to be right. I mean, he said it. So if he said there is collusion, I'm supposed to be taking somebody that says there is, because then I wouldn't take him for 2 reasons. But the number 1 reason is the fact that he would have been wrong. If he said that there's no collusion, he's right.
He is going to have to make, or could potentially make, a lot of big calls in the Mueller investigation. If Mueller decides that he wants to subpoena you, the Attorney General, Whitaker, can block that. If Mueller issues a final report, he can decide how much goes to Congress or doesn't go to Congress. You tweeted this week about, quote, Bob Mueller and his gang of Democrat thugs.
Right.
If Whitaker decides in any way to limit or curtail the Mueller investigation, are you okay with that?
Look, it's going to be up to him. I think he's very well aware politically. I think he's astute politically. He's a very smart person, a very respected person. He's going to do what's right. I really believe he's going to do what's right.
But you won't overrule him if he decides to curtail.
I would not get involved. And all these people that say, I'm going to end the investigation, they've been saying that now for, how long has this witch hunt gone on? It's gone on for what?
Since May of 17.
Okay, but how long have I been looked at? You know when I've been looked at?
Since July of 2016.
From the day I announced, I was looked at as a candidate with nothing, no proof, with phony people like McCabe and Strzok and his lover. You had Lisa Page, his lover. These people were looking at me. They wanted an insurance policy just in case I won or Hillary lost. And this was the insurance policy. It's a scam. There was no collusion whatsoever. And the whole thing is a scam.
Your team is preparing written answers to questions about...
No, not my team. I'm preparing written answers. I'm the one that does the answer. Yes. Are they writing them out?
Yes.
Yeah. They're writing what I tell them to write.
Are they going to be submitted?
At some point very soon, yes. I've completed them.
So you are submitting...
And it wasn't a big deal. By the way, it wasn't a big deal. The questions were asked and answered. It wasn't a big deal. They make it like I had meetings for many, many hours. I got the questions. I responded. We wrote them out. I read them once. I read them a second time. We made some changes. That's it. They're very simple. You know why? I did nothing wrong.
Here's my question, though. You are submitting written answers to the special counsel about the issue of collusion, but not on obstruction of justice.
Well, there was no obstruction of justice.
Let me, if I may, sir, just
I think they probably agree with that.
And
all you have to do is look at Article 2.
Is that your final position, that there's going to be no sit-down interview and nothing, written or in person, on obstruction?
I would say probably. Probably. I mean, I can change my mind, but probably. I think we've wasted enough time on this witch hunt, and the answer is probably. We're finished.
What are the odds? 1 in 100?
I don't do odds. I gave very detailed.
Casinos, sir.
You're right, and very successfully, actually. We gave very, very complete answers to a lot of questions that I shouldn't have even been asked. And I think that should solve the problem. I hope it solves the problem. If it doesn't, I'll be told and we'll make a decision at that time. But probably this is the end.
Turkish President Erdogan says that he has shared a tape with the U.S. and other countries that is of the killing of Jamal Khashoggi inside the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Have you, one, either heard the tape yourself or been briefed on it? And if so, to your mind, what does it show?
We have the tape. I don't want to hear the tape. No reason for me to hear the tape.
Why don't you,
but I've been
why don't you want to hear it, sir?
Because it's a suffering tape. It's a terrible tape. I've been fully briefed on it. There's no reason for me to hear it. In fact, I said to the people, should I? They said, you really shouldn't. There's no reason. I know everything that went on in the tape without having to.
And what happened?
It was very violent, very vicious, and terrible.
A month ago, you said you had spoken with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and that he had told you directly that he had no knowledge of this.
That's right. And still says that.
But we now know that some of the people closest to him, some of his closest advisors were part of this. Question, did MBS lie to you, sir?
I don't know. Who can really know? But I can say this. He's got many people now that say he had no knowledge.
What if the Crown Prince, speaking to you, the President of the United States, directly lied to you about
it? He told me that he had nothing to do with it. He told me that, I would say, maybe 5 times at different points.
So what if he's lying?
As recently as a few days ago.
Do you just live with it because you need him?
Well, will anybody really know? All right. Will anybody really know? But he did have certainly people that were reasonably close to him that were probably involved. You saw we put on very heavy sanctions, massive sanctions on a large group of people from Saudi Arabia. But at the same time, we do have an ally, and I want to stick with an ally that in many ways has been very good.
So if Congress were to move to either try to cut off any U.S. involvement in the war in Yemen or to block any arms sales, you won't go along with it?
Well, I want to see Yemen end, but it takes 2 to tango. Iran has to end it also. And Iran is a different country than it was when I took over. It's far weakened because of what I did with the so-called Iran deal, Iran nuclear deal, which was one of the great rip-offs of all time. But I want Saudi to stop, but I want Iran to stop also.
When Democrats flipped the House back in 2006 and picked up 30 seats, President Bush 43 had a news conference the next day and said, we had a thumping. Last week, in this election, the House picked up, so far, it's 36 seats. It may be on the way to 40 seats. And your reaction was that it was almost a complete victory.
I won the Senate. You don't mention that. Well, excuse me. I won the Senate.
I understand that.
I think they said 88 years.
But this was this is a historically big defeat in the House. You lost 36, maybe 40 seats. Some would argue that it was a thumping. And I want to talk about some of the ways in which you lost. You lost in traditionally Republican suburbs, not only around liberal cities like Philadelphia and D.C., but also red state big cities like Houston and Oklahoma City. You lost among suburban women. You lost among independents. And in 3 key states that I think you remember pretty well, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, you lost both the governor's seats and the Senate seats.
Are you ready? I won the Senate. And that's historic, too. Because if you look at presidents in the White House, it's almost never happened where you won a seat. We now have 53 as opposed to 51. And we have 53 great senators in the U.S. Senate. We won. That's a tremendous victory. Nobody talks about that. That's a far greater victory than it is for the other side. Number 2, I wasn't on the ballot.
Wait, you kept saying.
I said, look at me. I said, look at me.
Pretend I'm on the
ballot. But
I
have people, and you see the polls, how good they are. I have people that won't vote unless I'm on the ballot, okay? And I wasn't on the ballot. And almost everybody that I won, I think they said it was 10 out of 11, and I went against President Obama and Oprah Winfrey and Michelle Obama in a great state called Georgia for the governor, and it was all stacked against Brian, and I was the one that went for Brian, and Brian won. Look at Florida. I went down to Florida. Rick Scott won. And he won by a lot. I don't know what happened to all those votes that disappeared at the very end. And if I didn't put a spotlight on that election before it got down to the 12,500 votes, he would have lost that election, okay? In my opinion, he would have lost. They would have taken that election away from him. Rick Scott won Florida. You have to say, excuse me, a man named Ron DeSantis is now your governor, your new governor of Florida. A wonderful man named DeWine is your governor of the great state of Ohio. Remember what they used to say before my election? You cannot win unless you win Ohio. I won Ohio. We had a tremendous set of victories. You look at the victories.
But if you can't carry, and you certainly didn't carry it 2 weeks ago, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, you're not going to get reelected.
I didn't run. I wasn't running. My name wasn't on the ballot. There are many people that think I don't like Congress, that like me a lot. I get it all the time. Sir, we'll never vote unless you're on the ballot. I get it all the time. People are saying, sir, I will never vote unless you're on the ballot. I say, no, no, go and vote. Well, what do you mean? As much as I try and convince people to go vote, I'm not on the ballot.
Up next, much more from our exclusive interview with President Trump. We have a spirited exchange about his calling fake news the enemy of the American people. And Mr. Trump makes a rare admission he'd like a do-over. We're back now with more from our exclusive interview with President Trump. About an hour before we sat down with the president, there was breaking news. A ruling on the CNN lawsuit against the White House for pulling a reporter's press pass. CNN argued the Trump administration violated its First Amendment rights. Administration lawyers said Mr. Trump can exclude any reporter he wants from the White House grounds. And that's where we started in the second part of our interview with the president. A federal judge who you appointed has just ruled that you must give CNN reporter Jim Acosta his press pass back. Your reaction to the ruling?
It's fine. I mean, it's not a big deal. What they said, though, is that we have to create rules and regulations for conduct, et cetera, et cetera. We're doing that. We're going to write them up right now. It's not a big deal. And if he misbehaves, we'll throw him out. Or we'll stop the news conference. Actually,
what are your rules going to be? What is it that you're saying?
They're doing them now.
This is over the line, and you lose your
they're
press
doing them now. I mean, we'll have rules of decorum. You know, you can't keep asking questions. We had a lot of reporters in that room, many reporters in that room, and they were unable to ask questions because this guy gets up and starts, doing what he's supposed to be doing for him and for CNN, and just shouting out questions. But I will say this: look. Nobody believes in the First Amendment more than I do. And if I think somebody's acting out of sorts, I will leave. I'll say, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate you coming, and I'll leave. And those reporters will not be too friendly to whoever it is that's acting up.
Why didn't you call on Acosta in the first place? I mean, there seems to me there's a simple solution here. Just don't call on him.
Actually, I like to do it, but in many cases I don't. He'll stand up. He's unbelievably rude to Sarah Huckabee, who's a wonderful woman. Unbelievably rude. And I see that, and I actually ask her the same. Why do you call on these people that are so nasty? And I think one of the things we'll do is maybe turn the camera off that faces them, because then they don't have any airtime. Although I'll probably be sued for that, and maybe win or lose it. Who knows? I mean, with this stuff, you never know what's going to happen.
Let's get to the bigger issue. In 2017, last year, you tweeted this, and I want to quote it accurately: "The fake news media is not my enemy; it is the enemy of the American people."
It's true, 100%. Not the media. I'm glad you're finally quoting it correctly, because they like to leave the fake news.
Okay,
out.
but that's what you said.
Fake news. So
but
the people that are supporting me in particular, they're very smart people. They're hardworking, brilliant, great people. They know when the news is fake, and they get angry when they see all of the fakeness. Frankly, the networks.
There have been people who've been critical of other presidents. No president has liked his press coverage. John Kennedy, in your Oval Office, canceled the subscription to the New York Herald Tribune. Nobody called it the enemy of the American people.
Chris, I'm calling the fake news is the enemy. It's fake. It's phony.
But
They'll
a lot
take
of times,
something
sir,
good.
it's just news you don't
No,
like.
it's not. No. I don't mind getting bad news if I'm wrong. If I do something wrong, like, for instance, the cemetery, I was not allowed to go because of the Secret Service, because they expected to take a helicopter.
Okay.
They had zero visibility. They said, sir, we are totally unequipped for you to go. In addition to that, the cemetery was far too far away from Air Force One, which is sort of like a control center where you had to be near. Not one paper that I saw wrote it that way. They said I stayed out of it because of the rain. And yet, the following day, I made a speech at the American Cemetery. It was pouring. It wasn't even really raining the first day, but the fog was tremendous, okay?
But, sir, leaders in authoritarian countries like Russia, China, Venezuela, now repress the media using your words.
I can't talk for other people. I can only talk for me. I will tell you.
But you're seen around the world as a beacon for
Chris,
repression, not for...
I'm not talking about you, but you sometimes maybe, but I'm not talking about you. The news about me is largely phony. It's false. Even sometimes they'll say, sources say. There is no source in many cases. In many cases there is.
I understand you don't like your coverage.
No.
Can I just bring the bigger
94%
Can I bring the bigger issue up?
Yeah.
Bill McRaven, retired admiral, Navy SEAL, 37 years, former head of U.S. Special Operations.
Hillary Clinton fan.
Special Operations.
Excuse me, Hillary Clinton fan.
Who led the operations, commanded the operations that took down Saddam Hussein and that killed Osama bin Laden, says that your sentiment is the greatest threat to democracy in his lifetime.
He's a Hillary Clinton backer and an Obama backer. And frankly,
he was a Navy SEAL.
Wouldn't it have been nice if we got Osama bin Laden a lot sooner than that? Wouldn't it have been nice? You know, think of this. Living in Pakistan, beautifully in Pakistan, in what I guess they considered a nice mansion. I don't know, I've seen nicer. But living in Pakistan, right next to the military academy, everybody in Pakistan knew he was there. And we give Pakistan $1.3 billion a year. And they don't tell him. They don't tell him.
You're not even going to give them credit for taking down bin Laden?
They took him down, but look. There's news right there. He lived in Pakistan. We're supporting Pakistan. We're giving them $1.3 billion a year, which we don't give them anymore, by the way. I ended it because they don't do anything for us. They don't do a damn thing for us. I'm totally in favor of the media. I'm totally in favor of free press. It's got to be fair press. When it's fake.
But the president get to decide what's fair and what's not.
I can tell what's fair and not. And so can my people, and so can a lot of other people.
I understand that, but
when you do something very good and they write it badly, and this is consistently, when you, as an example, rarely do they talk about...
Barack Obama whined about Fox News all the time, but he never said we were the enemy of the people.
Well, no, he didn't talk about the news. He didn't talk about anything. I'm only saying it very differently than anyone's ever said it before. I'm saying fake news, false reporting, dishonest reporting, of which there is a lot, and I know it. See, I know it because I'm a subject of it. A lot of people don't know it, but when I explain it to them, they understand it. And Chris, you know that better. You don't have to sit here and act like a perfect little, wonderful, innocent angel. I know you too well. I knew your father too well. That's not your gene. But let me tell you, I think some
of the coverage of you, sir, and I've said it on the record, is biased. But I don't think that
most of it is biased.
I don't know, but the idea that you call us the enemy of the people.
I'm not calling you that.
I'm talking about we're all together.
You don't understand it.
We're all together.
No. I'm not calling you.
It doesn't matter whether you call. When you call CNN and the New York Times,
I am calling,
and we're in solidarity, sir.
I am calling fake news. Fake reporting is what's tearing this country apart. Because people like things that are happening, and they're not hearing about it.
Where do you rank yourself in the pantheon of great presidents? There's Lincoln and Washington, there's FDR and Reagan. Do you make the top 10?
I think I'm doing a great job. We have the best economy we've ever had.
So where do you rank yourself?
We're doing really well. We would have been in war with North Korea if, let's say, that administration continued forward. I would give myself, look, I hate to do it, but I will do it. I would give myself an A+. Is that enough? Can I go higher than that?
Can you envision a situation, you talk about 6 more years, can you envision a situation well into your second term where you think that you're so good for the country and so essential for the progress of the country that you would try to amend the Constitution so you could serve a third term?
No.
Why not?
This won't happen. It's not. I think the 8-year limit is a good thing, not a bad thing.
You've talked a lot already about the cemetery and the fact that you didn't go because it was a security concern, and you did go the next day. Here's the thing.
No, excuse me. Not security concern. They wouldn't allow me to go.
I understand.
They said, sir, Secret Service said, sir, you cannot go. We are not prepared. You cannot go, because it was supposed to be a helicopter, but the helicopter couldn't fly because of zero visibility.
Okay,
so they said, sir, you cannot go.
But here's the question. You're back in Washington on Monday, Veterans Day. Why don't you go across the river to Arlington for that ceremony? Barack Obama went every year he was here in D.C.
I should have done that. I was extremely busy on calls for the country. We did a lot of calling, as you know.
But this is Veterans Day.
I probably, in retrospect, I should have, and I did last year, and I will virtually every year. But we had come in very late at night, and I had just left literally the American Cemetery in Paris, and I really probably assumed that was fine. And I was extremely busy because of affairs of state, doing other things.
Why?
But I would have done it.
Why haven't you visited our troops serving in war zones in Iraq and Afghanistan in the 2 years you've been in office as Commander-in-Chief?
Well, I think you will see that happen. There are things that are being planned. We don't want to talk about it obviously because of security reasons and everything else, but there are things that are planned. As you know, I was very much opposed to the war in Iraq. I think it was a tremendous mistake. It should have never happened. You're right. I don't think anybody's been more with the military than I have as a president in terms of funding, in terms of all of the things I've been able to get them, including the vets. I don't think anybody's done more than me. I've had an unbelievable busy schedule, and I will be doing it. On top of which, you have these phony witch hunts. On top of which, we've just been very busy. But I will be doing that.
Just before the midterms, you said your biggest regret is that perhaps you should have had a softer tone in your 2 years as president. But since then, some could argue you've been on a tear. At the press conference the day after the election, you mocked some of the Republican congressmen who lost, not embracing you.
Mia Love gave me no love, and she lost. Too bad. Sorry about that, Mia.
You went after 2 African-American reporters and basically said that they were dumb.
The same thing with April Ryan. I watch her get up. I mean, you talk about somebody that's a loser. She doesn't know what the hell she's doing.
Do you want them to rein in Robert Mueller?
What a stupid question that is. What a stupid question. But I watch you a lot. You ask a lot of stupid questions.
Question. I was in St. Joe's, Missouri this last week, and I was talking to a lot of loyal Republicans. They love what you've done to the economy. They love the fact that you have basically put ISIS out of business. The one thing they say is, why do you have to be so divisive? Why don't you do more to bring the country together?
I think that if I was very different, I wouldn't have gotten what we had to get. We got the biggest tax cuts in history. We got Anwar approved. We got rid of the individual mandate, which was the most unpopular thing you can imagine, healthcare. I got rid of it. Everybody said it would be impossible to get rid of it. And many, the regulations. I think if I was more modified, more moderate in that sense, I don't think I would have done half of the things that I was able to get completed. With that being said, other than you have to have a certain ability to fight back, and as you know, people have, they take strong stands on me both ways, love and hate. I'd like to see it a little bit maybe more right down the middle. But tone is something that is important to me. But a lot of times you can't practice tone because you have people coming at you so hard that if you don't fight back in a somewhat vigorous way, you're not going to win. And we have to win. This country has to win. We have a lot of victories coming. And I think if I go too low key, we're not going to have those victories.
Mr. President, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chris.
Very much appreciated, sir.
Thank you.
One point of clarification. Admiral McRaven never endorsed a candidate for president in 2016. But in a hacked email, Clinton campaign chair John Podesta discussed McRaven as a possible running mate. After the interview, President Trump took us into the Oval Office to talk about how he makes those tough decisions that come across his desk every day. That's next. After our interview, President Trump took us across the hall to the Oval Office. In the room where it happens, the president discussed his transition from real estate tycoon to leader of the free world. And he gave some insight into how he makes the tough decisions he faces every day. So have you gotten comfortable with the place yet, sir?
I have. I feel very comfortable. It took me a little while. You know, it's sort of incredible. You say you're the president of the United States. And I say, wow. And it takes a little while to get over.
I was going to ask you, the first time
Yeah.
that you're in the Oval Office
Right.
by yourself, everybody's gone. You're looking around the room, the iconic room, the most famous.
Here we are. You know, I've had people come into this, the biggest people in the world, presidents, prime ministers, the heads of the biggest companies in the world, and they always stop and they say, this is the Oval Office.
Yeah.
This is the Oval Office. There's nothing like it in the world. This is the Resolute desk, very famous. This is where John at the time, right? John Kennedy was right here. That's a little door that opens up.
Right.
And that was a famous picture. I could show you that picture. In fact, I'll give it to you. But this is a very important desk. FDR, John Kennedy. You know, we have 7 desks. And as president, you can choose any one of the desks. This is, to me, I think the most beautiful in terms of its carving. I also think, in many respects, it's, you know, just some people that I respect.
When you're sitting at the desk, how do you make decisions? I mean, do you agonize over them? Do you second guess yourself? How does...
I don't think about it. I don't think about, you know, how I make them. I make what I consider the right decision. I have great people working at the White House. They don't get enough credit. I have some tremendously talented people, and I will talk to them, and sometimes I'll have them go at each other. I do like that, you know, let them go at each other. And they do. They're very competitive people. And at the end, I make a decision. And certainly on the economy, a lot of things we've made a lot of good decisions, and I want to keep it that way.
Do you ever second guess yourself? Do you ever?
Yes, all the time.
And do you sometimes change your?
I've done things where I wished I went a different route, but then what you do is you change course and you bring it back, you stabilize it out. But
toughest decision you've had to make as president?
Well, I think North Korea has been very tough because, you know, we were very close. When I took that over, President Obama, right in those 2 chairs, we sat and talked, and he said that's by far the biggest problem that this country has. And I think we had a real decision as to which way to go in North Korea. And certainly, at least so far, I'm very happy with the way we went. I have a very good relationship.
Even though there's talk about that they're putting new sites?
Maybe they are, maybe they're not. I don't believe that. I don't. And, you know, could be. And which is, if that's the way it goes, that's the way it goes. You know, I go with the way we have to go. But so far, it's been good. We have a very good relationship. We've made, I think, some great decisions for the people of this country. And I do, you know, I put America first. And other countries should put themselves first. It's not like we should put and everybody else should be second us. No. Other countries are proud of their countries, and their leaders should put their countries first. But we were putting our country, in many cases, last. We were more worried about the world than we were worried about the United States. That's not going to happen with me.
We want to get some reaction now to our interview with President Trump from our Sunday group. Former Republican Congressman Jason Chaffetz, Jonathan Swan, who covers the White House for Axios, former Democratic Congresswoman Donna Edwards, and Gerald Seib from the Wall Street Journal. Well, Jonathan, I was struck by a lot that the president said. First, he really seems to be closing the door to any interview with Robert Mueller. He said probably it's finished. And he seemed to be opening the door to possible oversight of Mueller by the new acting Attorney General, Matt Whitaker.
Yeah, this is the first time I've ever heard him acknowledge on the record what has seemed to all of us to be reality, which is that there was no intention of him sitting down. We'd heard for months that he wanted to. Trump had said publicly that he wanted to, but his team really didn't want him to. That's the first time I've ever heard him basically shut the door to that. And with Whitaker, it's interesting. I don't know that it's credible when he told you that he wasn't aware of the statements that Whitaker had made about Robert Mueller, but it seems that Trump is very happy with him in his job, and I think it was notable that he sort of left it open that he could, constrain budget or other things. He didn't shut that off.
He said, his decision, I'll leave it to him. Then, Jerry, there was the president's refusal to acknowledge any defeat in the midterms, and when it came to the losses that Republicans did sustain, he absolutely flipped the script from the campaign and the rallies at the end to say, I wasn't on the ballot.
Yeah, no, it was the election's about me, the election wasn't about me turn, which is probably what you would expect, but he does seem fairly sensitive about the outcome. But I thought the fascinating part of that conversation was, and the fascinating part about the midterms, which you tried to draw him out on, is the details. It's not just the number of seats, it's where the defeats happened for Republicans. Happened in suburbs that they really need to win, and in 3 states, you correctly pointed out, that are crucial to the Trump coalition. So this wasn't just a defeat, it was a defeat in some places that are very sensitive politically. I will say, though, he's right when he says we held the Senate and we've added a couple of seats. That builds a firewall against overturning the tax cuts, against overturning the deregulation. In that part, the president's right. That is a significant achievement.
And he said, I'm not going to say which house is more important, but he made it clear, the appointments I want to make to the bench, to the cabinet, whatever, I can get through the Senate. I don't have to deal with the House.
And by the way, both the Republican caucus in the Senate and the Republican caucus in the House will be more pro-Trump now than they were before the election. The Trump enemies and critics and moderates are pretty much the ones who washed out.
People like that going. Congresswoman Edwards, what struck you about the president's reaction to the midterms, and do you see in what you heard from him any basis to believe that there's going to be any serious deal-making, compromise, and governing with the House Democratic majority?
Well, I mean, I heard the president acknowledge his mistake on Veterans Day, but he wouldn't acknowledge his mistake when it comes to the elections. I mean, we had Bush, who described it as a thumping, Obama as shellacking, and the president, victory is mine. And so, I look at this and say, well, what the president has underscored is the ability of the House of Representatives now to embark on investigations that they want in a measured kind of way, but also possibly doing something on prescription drugs, on infrastructure, on immigration even, if the president is willing to negotiate with the House. But I think we'll have to see. And right now, the House of Representatives is, I think, not in a mood to negotiate, at least the base of the Democratic Party. But we're going to come to a time where that's going to be true.
Congressman Chaffetz, I want to switch to still another subject. The president had some interesting things to say about the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. He says he won't even listen to the tape. He's been advised it's too violent. It's a suffering tape, he said. He left open the possibility that the Crown Prince may have been involved, but he made it really clear that he's not going to do anything to jeopardize relations with Saudi Arabia.
Well, the president's in a very difficult spot because there is so much on the line. I thought it was very interesting what he was saying about Yemen. Again, focusing back on Iran, that, yeah, he wants to get rid of what's going on in Yemen, but they've got to get the Iranians, and you need Saudi Arabia to triangulate them. I think that was pretty fascinating. And I was also fascinated about what he said about Pakistan. I thought that was very newsworthy about the foreign aid. That does not look good for Pakistan, which has nuclear capability, and it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
And then, Jonathan, there was the president's decision not to go to the cemetery in Paris. I should say, the order he got from the Secret Service on Saturday. And he brought that up several times on his own. I wasn't asking him about it. And a rare admission of a mistake by this president in not going to Arlington this last Monday.
This is the second time I've seen the president acknowledge a mistake on camera. The only other time I can recall was after Access Hollywood, when he did what looked to many of us like a hostage video, and then ultimately, sort of, after he apologized, flipped right back and brought the Clinton accusers to the debate. So it is like, it's unheard of for him to acknowledge a mistake. These are the matters that really he fixates upon. It's the optics of the presidency, it's the ceremony of the presidency, it's the visuals of the presidency, and the symbolism of the presidency. And this was such an obvious mistake that it's clearly gotten under his skin.
Jerry, you want?
Well, no, I was going to say that there was that, but there was also this fascinating byplay you had with him about tone, in which you tried to get him to talk a little bit about why doesn't he moderate his tone, even though he's hinted at it a few times. And he said essentially, this is the way I succeed. This is what I do. And I thought that was fascinating. So he admits a mistake, but he's not really going to change his style. Don't expect that at all. And he said essentially that's the formula for success for me.
All right, panel, we have to take a break here. But when we come back, there is some other news. The race for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi meets with a potential challenger, plus election drama in Florida. Who would have thunk? The Senate race between Rick Scott and Bill Nelson goes to a hand recount.